Tim Ballard, we are live. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. And hey, I just want to do a super quick introduction. First off, hello to all y'all freedom lovers out there. I'm here with a very special guest, the founder of Operation Underground Railroad, Mr. Tim Ballard. And aside from Tim's obvious good looks, there's a reason why we're talking here today. First off,
just my looks. That's not why we're here.
That's what we told you, but we actually have a secondary agenda. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but man, I just want to say the reason why everybody watching this is a freedom lover. And I personally think there's three types of people in this world. Those who just don't care about freedom. They don't value it. They're not going to do anything to uphold it. Then there's freedom lovers who certainly do care about their freedom and they're willing to do something about it. But then there's a third group of people who care about freedom so much that it's not just a concern for their own freedom. They're also concerned for other people's freedom, specifically that of the innocent. And they're willing to stand for freedom for themselves and others. And those people are what I would call the lions. And Operation Underground Railroad, y'all are lions. You're helping gift freedom and gift the lives back to people who have had every ounce of freedom unjustly taken from them. And that's children and women who are enslaved in sex trafficking. And there's so many great causes out there, Tim. But when I learned of Operation Underground Railroad a number of years ago at this point, it's a cause that touched my heart like nothing else. I realized children involved in human trafficking, I look at my little boy and realize those children who are enslaved, those are other people's version of my little boy. So it just touched my heart. And then just real quick, I want to let people know because of that, because we're a community filled with not just freedom lovers, but lions, people who are willing to stand for freedom for other people as well. This month, we have partnered with you, Operation Underground Railroad, to raise funds so that more children, women can be rescued from the most unjust situations you can think of, but also so more predators can be arrested as a result of your operations. And before we get into it, Tim, I just want to give a quick shout out, and this link should be pinned in the comments. If you would like to join the fundraising efforts, I personally, I have never found anything that has more value for my money, anything more valuable than I can spend my money on than donating to Operation Underground Railroad that gifts freedom back, gifts people's lives back to the innocent, those who would otherwise be helpless. So if you'd like to join the fun in contributing what you can, whether that's something small or something large, you can hit up the link in the comments as I'm attacked by flies, or you can go to awakenwithjp.com/OUR. Stands for Operation Underground Railroad. So with that little introduction where I mostly ignored your good looks, Tim, thank you for being here, brother. And for those who might not know or might just be vaguely familiar with what your organization does, instead of it just coming from my mouth, could you give us the rundown of what Operation Underground Railroad does?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much, JP. Always an honor to be with you. Huge fan. I watch all your stuff. It's amazing. Thank you for what you're doing to bring freedom to this world. And so Operation Underground Railroad is what I founded in 2013 after a 12-year career in the U.S. government. I spent 12 years as a special agent undercover operator with the Department of Homeland Security, 10 years on the border, fighting child trafficking on the border, which watching what's happening there, knowing what I know is insanity, by the way. We can hopefully talk about that at some point, but basically, after 12 years, realizing this problem is so much bigger than anyone could possibly even imagine. I was shocked year after year how deep it went, how big it was. This is children. There are children that are enslaved. It's the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet. There's There's up to 6 million children, we believe, in slavery, according to Department of Labor, U.S. State Department, and 2 million of those it's commercial sex. And I wouldn't believe it, except everywhere we ever have gone in search of these children, we find them, and we find the predators, and we find the traffickers. So this is massive business. And back to the border, the movie Sound of Freedom actually kicks off on the border. Like, that's where the story kind of begins, with a rescue operation that I participated in, rescuing a little boy who was being trafficked by an American man into the United States. True case. And he tells me, and when we rescue him out of this van, and they filmed the scene right on the spot, right where it happened, at the port of entry, at the West Calexico port of entry, he tells me about his older sister, and he says she's also been taken. And boom, off we go into this journey. That's kind of the beginning of the film. But I kind of got ahead of myself. After 12 years, in the government, I realized, look, if we really want to make a huge difference, I've got to leave. Too many bureaucratic restraints, too much jurisdictional kind of limitation, and all the work I was doing overseas. If I couldn't find the American, it was all for naught, even though we'd infiltrated and found the kids. So it's like, who's going to rescue the kids? And the U.S. government would say, come home. I can't come home. And finally, there was 2 cases in 2012 where they said, come home. And I said, I can't. I'm too invested. I'm too deep. If I come home, these kids will be rescued. And I had to make a choice. Either quit my job and rescue kids, or come home and don't rescue kids. That's not a fun decision. That's not a fun place to be, Yeah. And ultimately it came down to my wife, who said to me, you have no choice. You have to quit your job. And ultimately she said, because I said, no, you're crazy. I was being a wimp. And she said, I will not let you jeopardize. This is a quote. The most powerful quote any human being ever gave to me was from my wife. The second week of December of 2013, she said, if I will not let you jeopardize my salvation by not doing this.
Wow.
And that's the basis of the movie. That's the movie Sound of Freedom that's coming out July 4th. That's the crux of it. That's where it starts. It's quitting, and then what happened after that. And what happened, spoiler alert, is the founding of this organization that is now all over the world, and we're assisting law enforcement as private operators, assisting in every way possible to rescue children and bring them to restoration.
Yeah, and there's so much I want to ask you, Tim, and actually the movie being one of them. And by the way, before we get into it, just freedom lovers watching this, one thing I find for myself, I don't know if it's going to be true for everybody, but when my hygiene probably looks poor because I have flies flying all over me right now.
Take a shower, JP, for hell's sake.
I'm out here in 105-degree Texan heat, so the flies are getting me. But one thing I notice in myself when I'm basically waking up to the problem of human trafficking, when I hear details about it, I find I get really uncomfortable, and part of me just doesn't want to listen. So I don't know if that's going to be true for all you beautiful freedom lovers watching this, but if it is, one, I would just say that's normal. It is normal to feel uncomfortable when you're hearing about the most, I would call it satanic crap that despicable human beings do. Yet I would invite you to stick with it, because you can either go back to sleep in the coffin of your comfort zone, cover your eyes, pretend like the problem doesn't happen, and then you're powerless for helping the problem. You're powerless for doing anything about it. And of course, awareness about a major problem, that is essential. And one thing I know about freedom lovers is we're brave, we're bold, we're courageous. We're not afraid to feel discomfort in the name of waking up to realities. So I know that's something I actually have to have internal dialogue within myself. So I just wanted to put that out there. But before we get into more of like what you see on the ground, the problem that Operation Underground Railroad is solving, you mentioned it. You've got a real feature film coming out, The Sound of Freedom. I believe that is released July 4th, #Freedom Independence Day. And could you tell us a little bit, I mean, one, what the movie's about, but two, why that movie needed to be made and what you hope to do with it?
right. So Sound of Freedom, like you said, is a feature film that kind of tells a little bit of the story or what I kind of just talked about. July 4th, theaters everywhere. We're hoping to sell 2 million tickets to represent the 2 million children in the commercial sex trade. And I'm so grateful for this film. You know, what happened in the aftermath of my wife telling me that her salvation was at risk if I didn't quit my government job, right? Like, and so we did, and we started the foundation. But that led to the operation in Colombia that rescued all these children who were being trafficked in Colombia. And I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but it ends. One of the climax of the film, the pieces that are kind of the apex of the film is the rescue that happens on this island. Well, that was a true rescue that happened October 11th, 2014. And that rescue made news all over, national news, Scott Pelley and the CBS News. And all of a sudden, unexpectedly, we started receiving calls from production companies. What's this story? This sounds like a movie. Is this real? What's going on? And we actually turned down several offers because I don't trust Hollywood. I mean, it was kind of ironic almost, because I'm like, Hollywood's calling. I have to be here because of Hollywood. I have a job because Hollywood, it creates the content that creates the sex addicts that eventually become the abuser. So it was a weird thing. But ultimately we connected with these amazing, God-fearing, freedom-loving kind of folks that, would be just super comfortable in your company, JP. And when they came to me, I said, you guys are it. You're the guys. And they made this film, and it tells the story of, like I said, starting on the southern border, we find this little boy and what happens to him and how the pedophilia works in the United States, how it's all transnational. It connects back down to Colombia, and it depicts the real events that happened when we took down this entire trafficking organization that was selling. In the end, it was actually 3 organizations and over 120 kids and women rescued. So it's a crazy story. It's like a thriller kind of. It punches you in the stomach. It teaches you what it is, but it's also exciting. Like it's a journey. You're looking for these kids the whole time. And it's kind of like Taken in a way, and that kind of thrill. But it's all based in truth. So hopefully people come out with enlightened, not just entertained, but wow, this is real, and what can I do about it?
Yeah, it's unfortunately a true story. And yeah, man, coming out enlightened. So it comes out July 4th. Where is it going to be shown? How can people find it?
It's going to be, so if people go to angel.com, Angel Studios, that's what brought you The Chosen. If anyone's ever seen The Chosen, it's the only TV show my family and I watch. So I was super stoked to find out that Angel Studios was going to pick up this film. But it's going to be in, I think it's close to 3,000 to 4,000 theaters. So it's every theater any theater where anyone's living, you're going to find it there. It's actually doing very well. It's outselling Disney's Indiana Jones 3-1 already.
Awesome.
So that's fun. Unexpectedly, they're selling out theaters, so it's actually doing phenomenally in pre box office sales. So we're pretty optimistic that it could be pretty big. It looks like it's going to be pretty big.
That's amazing. And I guess with the state of, most of Hollywood at this point, it's too bad that it's doing well. Maybe if you guys just went super woke with it, it would repel anybody from watching it. But I guess you just decided to make a good movie based on truth. It's kind of weird. And
it is kind of, the silent majority is coming out. It's like they are there. They are there, and this movie proves it. They're coming out to watch this film. But JP, you should know, like Disney, ironically, actually owned this movie for a time.
No kidding.
So Fox produced. No, this movie's been done for 5 years. It's been a freaking spiritual warfare to get it out. It was. Well, I say it was filmed 5 years ago. Fox produced it. Then Disney bought it, but they bought it, and then they told us they're not going to shelve it. Like, what?
Why would Disney shelve it? I mean, I got my bias about Disney, but
they didn't give us a reason. Eduardo Verastegui's the producer, so he knows the details, but he just said, hey, Disney owns it, and they're not going to, they have no plans to put it on the big screen. And I'm like, I was just devastated. Like, you got to be kidding me. And he did some tricks. This guy's amazing, Eduardo, the producer. He's a Mexican producer. He may or may not be running for president of Mexico. in 2024, which I hope he does. But he's an amazing guy, and he got it back. Now that's when he brings in these big producers, Tony Robbins. You get people, just some big players who came in. Some big foundations and business owners in Mexico, and they bought it. They bought it back, and then they had to but now it's kind of independent film, and they just kept pushing it, and then Angel Studios comes in and says, "We want it. We don't put it out." And that all happened earlier this year, and boom, here we are. So it's been a struggle. There's a lot of people that don't want this movie out there. I promise you that. There's a lot of people that want this not, seen in the light.
Yeah, and I still sort of understand, but also I just don't understand why there's some people who don't want the realities of human trafficking out there, why they wouldn't want a movie like this that helps enlighten people, why they wouldn't want it out there. And I'm, not to get political, but do you have any speculation why that is? Like, is that just Hollywood heads wanting to protect these criminals?
I think there's two reasons. One is, I get invited a lot to speak on mainstream media and then cancel that before I go on, because they say people don't want to hear this. When people hear about this, they superimpose their own children's faces on the children that you're going to talk about. We don't want to hear about it. It hurts. Okay. So that's the more innocent reason, which I understand because I fight with that. But there's a more cynical one that's probably more true than I want to even admit, which is that if there's 2 million children in commercial sex trade, in the United States, we're the number one consumer year after year of child exploitation material. We're also in the top 3 countries for destination countries for human trafficking. So there's a lot of people in power, like Epstein's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of people in power that do not want us to know, or the world to know what's real. In fact, I think they go so far as some of this QAnon stuff, some of it's real, but some of it's so far out of reality. I sometimes think that the pedophiles and the people who are against our mission are actually promoting some of this to make it all fake, go so far in one direction that it becomes not even credible. And it's like, no, this is credible. This is real. So I think that, look, what's happening on the southern border is so insane to me, having spent 10 years there. I mean, they know, the Biden administration, they know damn well what's going on. They know that 200,000 plus unaccompanied minors showing up to the border and then letting them in under the name of compassion. And these kids show up. I mean, there's thousands of them, JP, that are under 5 years old. What's a 3-year-old doing showing up alone at the border? I mean, again, the economy of pedophilia, it's here. We're the demand. So you walk across the border. I've been there. They give the traffickers who are making about $14 million a day, that according to Wall Street Journal, that's how much they're making on this stuff. And these kids walk across with a little piece of paper with a name and number. That's the sponsor. It says George Smith, whatever. EVP, not their fault. Thousands of border folks are heroes. I love these folks. They hate what's going on. They can't enforce the laws on the books. So the kids have to be released to Health and Human Services. They go to some NGO, and I've watched them. They have no background checks, no DNA tests. They pick up the phone, call George Smith, the number that's safety pinned to the kid's shirt, and it says, "Hey, we got this kid, Jose Gonzalez." "Oh, yeah, that's my nephew," whatever. It used to be that he'd have to go pick him up. Not anymore. Your taxpayer dollars will pay for the last leg of what is likely a trafficking event, and they get put on a bus, on a plane, and your taxpayer dollars fly the child to George Smith, who nobody knows who the hell he is, but he gets to have this child. It is absolute insanity. And they called Trump racist and all this crap, or not caring about foreign kids. It's the opposite, folks. In border enforcement is compassion. Border enforcement means that the traffickers don't have the incentive in the first place to take children in Central America and try to bring them into our sex markets. But this is the reality. So when I look at that, I get even more cynical. And I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I just look, you guys know what you're doing. Your agenda to get people in here hoping they'll vote D. That's all I can think. I can't think of anything else. Maybe I'm wrong, but you want all these people in here. Why? And you know what you're sacrificing. The sacrifice here are children. The blood of children is the sacrifice you're willing to commit in order to push whatever political agenda you're pushing. And it makes me want to vomit. It is so disgusting because, again, I spent a decade on that border, and I know that border enforcement and walls help us rescue children, because it brings the children into that port of entry where we rescue them, like is depicted in The Sound of Freedom. That was the whole point. Like that's so here we are, and I think that there's definitely an institutional, according to this administration at least, reason why you wouldn't want this information out there. You don't want it out there. What's actually happening.
Man, one of the things I love about Lions is Lions don't wait around for permission. Lions don't wait around for someone else to take care of the problem. In this case, waiting around for the government to take care of the problem, actually secure the border, do something to rescue children, do something to take down the trafficking rings. But Tim, you're a Lion, and you've formed a team of Lions around you who sees what I think is the most heart-wrenching problem out there, and you do something about it. And y'all go into the most dangerous situations on earth with violent, soulless criminals. And you do that because something matters to you guys more than your own well-being. And that's the children. That's justice happening. And in Operation Underground Railroad, one of the things I've loved learning about you is not only do you put your lives on the line setting up operations and rescuing children, but you're also cutting the head off the beast. You're working with law enforcement to take down the operations, make arrests. And recent statistics I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard Operation Underground Railroad is coming up on its 7,000th arrest of the perpetrators. And I've also heard that on average, the average predator will victimize 117 kids. So if you're arresting 7,000 perpetrators, you do the math of not only saving children who are, in trafficking, but preventing future children from being trafficked. 7,000 arrests, 117 victims per perpetrator over their lifetime. That's over 700,000 children who will never have to be enslaved because of your efforts so far. And that's just inspiring to me. It's like, oh, you're not only just addressing the symptom, which, by the way, if you were just addressing the symptom, that is the most worthy symptom to address, but you're also going after the heart of the satanic beast. And I'm curious, would you be able to give a general overview, start to finish, of what an operation entails? And I'd imagine various operations will have their differences, but from start to aftercare, what is it that Operation Underground Railroad that y'all do?
Great. Yeah, perfect. Yes. Like you said, there's so many variations how the intel comes in, but I'll give it to you almost at its rawest form. Sometimes if you walk into a country and say, look, we're here to help. We have the tools, digital tools, undercover tools. We have dogs that will go in to pedophiles' homes and sniff out the little glue component that's found in every microchip. So we'll find those hidden phones, those micro SD cards. So we've deployed almost 70 dogs at this point with that kind of. So we have all the tools and technology. So we'll walk into a country and say, look, we're here to help you. What do you need? A common response that I've received is, well, we do know it's happening, and we know it's happening at this beach, but we don't have the resources to deal with it, and we don't really know what to do. Great. Can we have permission to go sit on that beach? Okay, so we go to the beach. We go to the beach, hidden cameras. I mean, this is a real story. I'll tell you a real story. So I'm sitting on this beach in South America, and this guy comes up to me within 20 minutes, and he offers me 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, just like that. And I'm like, holy crap, they were right. They knew. And I got it on camera. And the guy's telling me, yeah, you can go to that house. See that house down there? You can go in there, give me $700. You can have sex with that 12-year-old. There's 5 of them. Here's their pictures. That fast. I'm talking 20 minutes. So I say, look, I have to leave right now, but can I come back? I want to have a party. Can you do a bachelor's party kind of thing? So I go back, we give the information to the prosecution. They say, oh my gosh, here you go. And they start instructing us. They sign us up as informants, so we're official, so we don't get in trouble for soliciting something illegal. And then we hit the trafficker back up and say, okay, we want to come to the party. What are the rules? Let's meet again. Maybe there's 2 or 3 other meetings where they get more specific. As we might try to build up a little bigger. Like there's been cases, for example, where we say, hey, look, you have 15 kids, but like I got 100 dudes that I could bring down over the next year. And then that causes them to bring their competition in, right? We're very careful not to, create demand. Like there's ways we can, the way we ask questions, and we have digital forensics watching, look, don't go find a kid. I only want kids that you're already doing this. And so we're careful with that. And then at the end, they'll bring sometimes they'll bring their competitors in, and now we got them all in the same place. And boom, you got 50 plus kids in a location who have been trafficked for years. And you set it up, and the cops come in, take everyone down. The kids go to an aftercare center that we've already established a relationship with well before the operation even began. Made sure they had 50 beds and 50, room for 50 children. Then we stay with the kids. So this operation that's depicted in Sound of Freedom, those kids that's our first op. So those kids are now young adults. Did it work? Did we actually, apart from putting the bad guys in jail, did the kids get healed? And sure enough, we call them the triple take kids. That's what we call this operation. They are now in their early 20s. They formed their own little nonprofit that we support, that we fund. It's called Tejiendo Sueños, which means weaving dreams. We provide microloans for them. We help them with, any other kind of therapeutic things they need to continue to heal. And it's like, this is awesome. It worked, and some of them have already been participating in rescuing people on their own as ambassadors of OUR. So that's one example. Like there's 100 different ways that the intel might come in. We did an operation in Ukraine last year. It was all over the news. It said Mel Gibson was producing this documentary. Mel Gibson was part of it, in that he provided intelligence to me about children orphans who are being hurt in Ukraine. So here's another, we go out to help orphans, just get them out of the war zone. And we find this Dutch pedophile group trying to traffic them into Mexico. So I won't get into that. They'll take another, but like, there you go. Like sometimes it happens. We don't even expect it. We're doing something else, and we find a lead, and boom, off we are to Mexico. And we end up taking out a whole pedophile network. There's a docuseries on this coming out called The Hidden War. Tony Robbins is actually producing that because it's such a phenomenal story. But yeah, so these cases come out in various ways, but that's kind of an idea of how it kind of sometimes will work out.
Yeah. And I think, there's so much about what you do, how you do it, that touches me and blows me away. But the reality that these kids, they've been in the most traumatic situations you could imagine. So the psychological trauma, if not physical trauma, is just something I can't imagine. But knowing that Operation Underground Railroad helps provide and facilitate aftercare so that these children can heal and rebuild their lives, it's just beautiful icing on the cake. And I'm curious, for people out there who are thinking like, okay, my heart's touched. I understand, like the innocent, these kids would be helpless if it wasn't for lions like Operation Underground Railroad stepping up, going into harm's way. What kind of expenses do you incur as far as costs from setting up a sting to all the way through aftercare?
So like the operation I just described to you, that was a real case I was actually going through and thinking about. That one, it took about, I think we started in like March, and it ended in the fall. So that's how long that took to rescue. It was over 50 kids in that operation. So the operation itself that all cost about $90,000 to pull all that off, because you're sending operators there and back. You're renting houses, sting houses. There's a lot that goes into building your own credibility. And that's not even including the aftercare. Once those 50 kids go into aftercare, now we try our best to support the aftercare facility that is taking these kids on board. And that's another, I mean, it is not cheap. I'll tell you that, which honestly, JP, that's why I look back and I think, what the hell was I thinking when I quit my job? Like it's one thing to have all this freedom to do whatever you without bureaucratic restraints, but there's no tax dollars coming in to support it. Like the fact that I don't know why I did it. I look back and I think I was crazy. Glenn Beck was my savior in that time. I was on Glenn Beck's show a year before because of a book I wrote. It didn't even do that well, so I don't even know why Glenn brought me on the show. But it was a book about America and God and the history of America. But he loved the book. He brought me on, and that gave me an inroad to then come to him later when I was in this crisis. Like, I'm going to quit my job. What do I do? I can't. And Glenn actually raised me the money, like just on the spot. Like, that guy's amazing. I don't know if you know Glenn, but like, if people knew who he really was, like cameras on, cameras off, doesn't matter. He raised that money. And without him, those kids wouldn't be rescued. In fact, Glenn actually founded an organization called the Nazarene Fund, which does similar anti-trafficking work through the Middle East. It's organ harvesting of children. It started because ISIS was kidnapping Christian children and Yazidi children. And then I'm now the CEO of that. So I actually run the Nazarene Fund, and Glenn Beck's on the board. So we're working through 2 organizations right now to do this work. But anyway, so yeah, it's expensive. And the great thing about it, we talked about the silent majority. The vast majority of our donations, over 50%, come from this individuals who give $20 a month, or $1,000 here, and we love that because we know it's more than just the money; it's the people getting loud. That's why there's hopefully going to be millions of people showing up to watch this movie, because we want to create a movement right around this very ugly plague that's attacking all of our children.
Yeah, and I just want to say to people out there, if you've got your basic needs met and you've got anywhere from a little surplus to a lot of surplus, any amount you can give helps. And you can go to awakenwithjp.com/OUR. And for this most recent fundraiser we've been doing the past month, which, by the way, Freedom Lovers, we have $100,000 goal for this fundraiser to raise $100,000 for Operation Underground Railroad by July 4th. Right now, we're well on our way, $67,000. And I personally think we can obliterate that goal. But as I was sitting down with my wife to figure out, okay, what are we going to donate for this round of fundraising? I just realized, like, all right, like, we have our basic needs met. There's plenty of other things that would be fun to do with this money, but I can't think of another damn thing that would give us more value, make us feel better, happier, and more fulfilled than gifting freedom to children who would otherwise be stuck in a hopeless situation so bad that I can't even imagine it. So we personally put in $10,000, and it's like, yeah, we feel that, but man, it brings so much joy to us. And also knowing, maybe your amount is $20. Just know there's so many other people out there who care, who are donating a $20 amount or a bigger amount. So your donation is making a huge difference. And if you'd like to get in on the joy of donating, you can hit up the link right here, awakenwithjp.com/OUR. That's also pinned in the comments. The other thing I was thinking when we were considering how much are we going to donate on this round, I realized, like, dude, we have the easy part. We're sitting here in our house. We're safe. We're just literally transferring a little bit of money from our account to the fundraising page. And I realized, like, oh, Tim and his team, they have the hard part. They have the part I wouldn't want to do, where y'all are going into harm's way because nobody else is going to do that for these children. And I'm curious, just what are some of the dangers and the situations, the types of people that you guys have to encounter in order to rescue these kids?
Well, we see everything. I mean, there was, as you were talking, I just remembered a case I tried to forget about, but we were hunting for children and predators out on the border of Dominican Republic. This was years ago, in Haiti, on that dangerous border. And we ended up getting sideways with a bunch of traffickers, and they pulled their guns out on us, their machetes on us, and there's hundreds of them, probably 200 of them. They took us down to the city square, like, oh my God, we're dead. It's over. They didn't know who we were. We were pretending to be doctors to get into this region because we knew kids were being trafficked there. But they just decided that after we serviced the whole community with medical services, like legit ones, we had real doctors there too. it just infiltrated though, really. And after it was done, they didn't think we were hunting for children or anything or for traffickers, but they still decided, well, now that we got everything out of them, let's kill them and take all their cars and their equipment. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get yourself into. You're like, oh my gosh, I got machine guns heading my way and machete. And we talked our way out of it, and by the grace of God, we got out of that situation. But look, we make a promise to our supporters, to our donors, and we say it. I say it often. There's no place we won't go. No place we won't. There's not some country where it says, well, that's too dangerous, or that country's too corrupt, or why would you work there? Like, nope. If we know a kid is there, we're gonna go, because it's not that kid's fault. That it's okay to sit back and say, well, that kid can have no hope. No one's coming for that kid. I remember there was a case in Haiti. Haiti's one of those countries we get criticized a lot for going into because it is corrupt. We did a rescue operation there a few years ago where it was very long and drawn out. And actually, it's in the documentary Operation Toussaint, which is on Amazon Prime. People can go watch this. But we ended up finding at the end of this multi-month operation this little red door in downtown Port-au-Prince. You wouldn't even think anything else. It looks like a janitor closet, but you open it up and it's the den of this Satanism. It was this dungeon-looking place, and these children were being raped there. It was the first time actually we ever walked in on a raid and saw the kid actually being raped. Anyway, we got the kid out, and there's 4 of them that came out. A couple of them had babies, and we found the infants they were using to like leverage the young moms. Anyway, the next day we had our aftercare team talking to them, and the girl couldn't believe it. She finally spoke. Her first words, holding her little teddy bear after being rescued. She had been kidnapped at age 6 after her parents died in the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. And from 6 to 16, I think, she was just brutally raped for money. And here the red door opens, we go in and get her. And she says to us, and it's so sweet. It's in the documentary, Operation Toussaint. She says, is it okay for me to have hope? Like, can I actually have hope? Like, is it real? She couldn't. Why would she believe? She knew something about her life. She didn't know much, but she knew much. She knew this much, that she lived in the most obscure country, maybe in the Western Hemisphere. And worse than that, she was being held captive in the most obscure corner of that most obscure country, behind a little red door. Who the hell is going to open that red door? Nobody's going to open that red door. And yet it opened. And here she got out. And I use this to say there are red doors everywhere throughout the world. Everywhere throughout the world, there's red doors, and there's children behind them, and they are in places. Sorry. And they are in places where there's no hope. They don't think there's hope. The people living there don't think there's hope. The government officials don't think there's hope. They're not looking for them. But we will go there. And that's OUR, and it's the Nazarene Fund. The Nazarene Fund, we've been all throughout the Middle East, Iraq, Syria, Africa, crazy places. This last year, we took down a baby factory. I posted about this. I didn't know if it was going to scare people, but I mean, these guys, these traffickers in Western Africa are kidnapping young women, children, young as 13 years old, and impregnating them, getting their babies out, and then selling their babies immediately to witch doctors who are selling their organs or cutting off the kids. Sorry, I think your audience can handle this. You have the right audience, but
it's
cutting
reality.
off the kids' genitalia, and they're selling them, on the black market because people think the gods will bless them. I mean, we've taken down 2 of these baby factories, rescued dozens of children from this, and we're still at it. I mean, this is the reality, but no one would be coming. No one would be coming if we didn't come. And when I say we, I mean you and all your audience and everyone who's helping us. If we're not coming, I promise you, no one's coming. But we will go. We will go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm incredibly touched by that. Like, is it okay for me to have hope? And I realize Operation Underground Railroad it's motionless without its supporters. So all of us together, and y'all are the ones with your feet on the ground. I'm so grateful for it. But as supporters, we are someone's hope. And when I think about what's going on, I can't fathom how and why. The only possible explanation I can think of is it's Satan. It's satanic stuff. And we are the answer to someone's prayers. You think, well, how could God allow this situation? God, please help us. And I think God is. There's a reason why Operation Underground Railroad has become so successful, so empowered. And when you're considering making a donation, if you do, just know that, in my opinion, that's God working through you for you to be the living answer to someone else's prayer who would otherwise have no hope. But we get to be that hope, and it's terrible that it's needed, but the reality is it's needed, and that makes it such a beautiful thing, obviously, in the face of pure evil. So
absolutely, it's the truth. And JP, there's very few people with an audience, relatively speaking, that are willing to even talk about this, because it hurts. It sucks. It's easier to pretend it's not happening. So, I mean, like, the mainstream media won't talk about it. It's the brave people like you and your audience that are willing to engage this darkness. Like, look, I've been here for 20 years and I still break down even thinking about it. Like, that's how horrible it is. And I'm not very comfortable always coming on and being so vulnerable, but I know you, I know your audience, and I know that your audience is lion. They're the lions. You guys are the lions, and we need you. We need you guys, because this problem isn't going away if the lions don't rise up.
Yeah, man. When I see some of the travesties going on, human trafficking being right at the top of that, I think it's impossible to have no peace of mind if you're not taking action. But when I look at people who are really well informed of what's going on, Tim, you're obviously well informed. You got boots on the ground. I do my best to be awake to things that are happening. So there's a difference I find when there's two groups of people that are awake. Those who are awake to what's really going on, and they have peace of mind. Certainly they get uncomfortable. We get stressed at times. But then the second group of people, they're awake to what's going on, and they don't have peace of mind. They're just like, the world's screwed. God help us. Like, he's not even going to help us. World's going to hell in the handbasket. The difference I find between these two groups, one has peace of mind, one doesn't. The difference is taking action creates peace of mind, because you're contributing to the positive solution of an immense problem. And I find that's true, whether it's just looking at basic freedoms being eroded through crappy governing, or a major problem like human trafficking. It sucks to know what's going on. It sucks worse to not know what's going on, but it also sucks to know what's going on and have no peace of mind about it, just being stressed out. But I find I would call it a universal principle. If you take action to be a part of a positive solution, you actually get peace of mind as the problem is being addressed. And one way we're inviting you to take action right now, my beautiful freedom-loving friends, if you haven't already, if your heart is calling you to do so, you can join me in helping be a supporter, being hope, being an answer, a prayer in answer for those who need it. You can make it a donation at awakenwithjp.com/OUR. That link is also pinned in the comments. So, Tim, before we sign off for today, I'm curious if you have any last messages for the beautiful freedom lovers who are out there.
I would ask your freedom lovers this, guys. July 4th was selected on purpose. Obviously, it's we can spend July 4th week celebrating, and like I love to do, and thinking about the history of freedom and the founding fathers, but just know we're in it right now. What the founding fathers fought still needs to be fought. And so that's why I chose that date. And it's not just, by the way, I've been talking a lot about the Red Doors overseas operations. I'm going to tell you something. I've had to divert most of my time to fighting culture wars. I know, JP, you're in the middle of this, but I never dreamed there'd be a day when our children were at the crosshairs of spiritual warfare, and what they're doing to our children. This leftist kind of woke, godless agenda of sexualizing children through what they're calling it sexual education. It's pornography. I used to be able to arrest people back in the early 2000s for providing that kind of material to children. And now teachers backed by the state that they're in, California being one of them, is providing the same material to kids and calling it liberating, calling it beautiful, calling it righteous. Then a 13-year-old, now that they're sexualized, right, and they're thinking that way, and they even teach the kids in some instances to go masturbate, so they have a feeling attached to the porn. Right now they're 12, 13 years old. Now think about what's going on here. This trans foist, what I call it, where it's the kids at 13 can consent to gender mutilation, can consent to putting chemicals in. It's insanity. I've raised 9 children. A 13-year-old cannot consent to that. You can't allow that. But here's the little trick that's going to happen. It's already happening. If they can consent to doing that, what's stopping the laws from then codifying around the concept that they could also consent to having sex with a 50-year-old? Or they could consent to saying, I identify as a 40-year-old, so I'm going to have sex with the 50-year-old pedophile. I have a book coming out. I'd love to come on later and tell you about it. It's called The Child Trap. And what I identify is I call it the pedophile network doctrines. There's 4 of them specifically, or there's probably more, but all the things that the pedophiles have been pushing for decades in their literature, in their political platforms, those who are brave enough to come out and actually say it. And it's so scary to see that what's happening, the woke have the same agenda. I'm not saying they're talking. I'm not calling them pedophiles, okay? What I'm saying is there's some dark source that's informing both sides because it's the same agenda. Sexualizing our kids leads to grooming them and then empowering them at 13 with a sexualized brain that they're already kind of robotic and sexualized. Now you're telling them they can choose whatever they want to do to their bodies. I mean, we are setting up our children right now like never before. And so this film and this movement isn't just about going into the dark corners of the earth and rescuing children. It's about protecting our children at home. I used to have a dream, JP, that I would not have to work anymore because we rescued all the kids. I am now, instead of that dream, it's a nightmare. The nightmare is that I won't be able to rescue kids anymore because soon there won't be laws left on the books that protect children. Because that's what America is doing right now, decriminalizing sex with kids. The UN just issued a report saying that it's time to decriminalize sex with children. Like this whole thing, don't call them pedophiles, call them minor attracted persons, right? It's all part of the same movement right now. And it's truly Satan who is targeting our children. That's the number one hit. And half the country seems to be going along with it. And I think most of them are just deceived because they think it's cool or tolerant or liberating. But really what they're doing, their agenda is simply this: to enslave our children in the name of liberating them. So this film is going to open eyes, not just to the rescue ops, but to preventing our children from literally falling into a pedophile trap that's being set for them. So July 4th, freedom lovers, buy your tickets. We want 2 million children. We want 2 million people, butts in seats that week, representing the 2 million children in commercial sex. And the place to go is angel.com, Angel Studios, angel.com/SOF. Buy tickets. And the cool thing Angel Studios did is you can buy tickets not only for yourself, but you can pay it forward and just buy tickets for anyone who might not be able to afford it, and they'll get to those right people. So we're expecting a mass movement here, and we know that I'm talking to the right audience. I know you guys will be there, and I thank you.
Man, amen to that, Tim. I mean, you mentioned there's spiritual warfare going on, and I do believe that. And sometimes I get delusional and think, oh my gosh, they're not only going after our children, they've got some of our children, and look how many angles they're going after our children. What do we've got? I mean, they've got so much of the mainstream media. They've got so much of corrupt Hollywood. They've got governments. They've got people in power. But then I realized, oh yeah, there's something they don't have. We have God on our side. And I think God works through people that are serving God's call of them. And Operation Underground Railroad, y'all aren't doing this because you're just hallucinating. This would be a good, I firmly believe God has called Operation Underground Railroad. I believe God has been the reason why this film is coming out. It's going to help raise more awareness, wake people up out of the satanic stupor that's camouflaged with love and light, rainbows and inclusivity. So people are waking up. I love it. And lions protect the innocent. I think that's why God put us on earth, not just for our own self-preservation, but because some people especially children, are in periods of vulnerability. They are innocent. They need protection. And I think the way God protects them is he puts lions on earth to protect them. So, beautiful freedom lovers, if you want to, please go see the film July 4th. I can't wait to see The Sound of Freedom. I can't wait to spread the word. And also, if you do feel the call in your heart to give what you can to the fundraising campaign, raise donations for Operation Underground Railroad to rescue children out of sex trafficking. If you want to be someone else's hope, if you want to answer someone else's prayer, then just go to awakenwithjp.com/OUR or hit the link in the description. And Tim, man, from my heart to yours, thank you for the work that you do. If I could dare for a second be the voice of children who you will be coming to rescue, thank you for all the personal sacrifice that you and your team makes. You are an absolute blessing. In my opinion, you are absolutely doing God's work. And I just want you to know, man, I'm with you to the end. My heart is forever in support of what you do, because it matters more to me than any other problem I've seen. So I so appreciate you, Tim, you and your team. Thank you for taking the time to speak to the minds and mostly hearts of all the freedom lovers out there.
Thank you, JP. I love you guys. We'll see you July 4th. Thank you.
Absolutely. Love you too, Tim.
All right.